Good morning.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joanna Marks. I am the senior counselor, or one of the senior counselors here at Southside High School. We are hosting this information session. A big part of that reason is because the FAFSA is a graduation requirement, and we want to do everything we can to make sure everyone is aware and has all the resources that they need to get it completed. Our guest speaker today is Miss Ann Carmichael with LELA, the Louisiana Education Loan Authority. Apologize. And she is going to guide us through this presentation. At the end, we will have a few minutes for some question and answer sessions. If you do put any questions in the chat, I'll be happy to read those aloud at the end during that part. And lastly, Ms. Cassidy has authorized an incentive for any students who make sure to get this FAFSA completed by December the 1st. We'll have a Gene Day, or Gene Week actually, during the month of December, probably that week right before we get out for the break for Christmas. So, so hopefully that's a little bit of incentive for you guys to get everything done in the next month or so, just shy of a month. And please reach out with even after today with any questions. We hope to even have some more information, evenings or opportunities for you guys throughout this month that we're working on. So, okay, with that being said, we have about 22 with us, which is a great number. So I'm excited to see everybody. And Ms. Carmichael, I think you can take it away.
Thank you so much for having me again. I do want to let you know that today's session is sponsored by LELA, Louisiana's nonprofit resource for FAFSA completion and college access. And we're all here to have a conversation about the college financial aid process. Now, we do know that college can be expensive, so let's talk about some of those costs and what you can expect to have to pay for. Your equipment, books and supplies, personal expenses that you might not be responsible for when you're living at home, room and board, and your tuition and fees. Now, when you're doing your college searches and you're looking for the cost of tuition, that's pretty prominent on college websites, but it is important to try to get an idea of the entire cost of attendance at each college that you're applying for. But the good news is that financial aid is available for students from the U.S. Department of Education, the state of Louisiana, your college or career school, and nonprofit and private organizations like LELA. There are 3 types of student financial aid: free money, which will include grants and scholarships; borrowed money, which might include your student loans; and earned money, which should include your federal work-study job. Now, types of federal student aid include the federal Pell Grant, Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, the Teacher Educational Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, Federal Work Study, and direct subsidized, unsubsidized, and PLUS loans. The federal grant family includes Pell Grants, which are for undergraduates with financial need, FSEOGs for undergraduates with exceptional financial need, service grants for students of military parents who died defending the country following 9/11, and then teach grants for students pursuing a teaching career. The Federal Work Study Program provides part-time jobs to help students pay for their education expenses. And this is a FAFSA question. So if you select yes to federal work study, the financial aid office at your colleges will begin to consider you for available positions on their campus. The earnings from those jobs will be paid directly to you, the student, and should be used to pay for your college expenses. And I want to tell you that these jobs look great on a student's first professional resume. So if you're going to a four-year college and you accept a federal work-study job, maybe it's in the chancellor's office. That is 4 years of professional employment that you have to show on that first resume. Now, if you can't complete college without student loans, then they are a good investment. However, you want to be careful to only borrow what you need to complete your education. And it's important to understand the types of loans that you might be offered. The direct subsidized loans are based on financial need, and no interest is charged until you graduate or cease to attend. These are known as need-based loans. On the other hand, almost everyone's eligible for the direct, unsubsidized loans. But just remember that the interest does begin to accrue on these loans once they're fully dispersed, which is usually in the spring semester of every academic year, and then throughout the life of the loan. So you can see that there is a big difference between direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So when you're receiving your financial aid offer, remember to accept the subsidized portion first. And you can remind yourself by saying that the U in unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on that particular loan. If you do make the decision to borrow, you always want to accept the federal student loans first, because payments aren't due until you graduate or cease to attend. The interest rate is fixed at a lower rate and no credit check is required. This loan is in the student's name only. On the other hand, private loans should be accepted very carefully, because some lenders are going to ask that you begin making payments while you're still in school. The interest rate might be variable and often it's higher, and they almost always require a cosigner. So make sure you're doing your research before selecting a private loan lender. Student financial aid can be used at four-year public and private colleges, community colleges, career and technical schools, for part-time classes, and to take online college courses. All federal student aid in most institutional and private aid is contingent upon completion of the free application for federal student aid, known as the FAFSA. Now, it launched on October 1st, and it does so every academic year. We're encouraging you to get your FAFSA completed and submitted as soon as possible, because these monies are issued on a first-come, first-served basis. You will want to pay close attention to your FAFSA deadlines. Your colleges will have priority financial aid deadlines. The state of Louisiana, in the form of the TOPS scholarship, has a FAFSA completion deadline. And yes, the FAFSA can be used as your TOPS application. Federal student aid has a FAFSA submission deadline, and Mrs. Marks might also have a final FAFSA completion deadline to meet that graduation requirement. To be eligible for federal student aid and complete a FAFSA, the student must be one of the following: a U.S. citizen or a U.S. national, have a green card, have an arrival departure record, or a battered immigrant status, or have a T visa. But let's say that the parents do not have any of these documents and do not fall into any of these categories. That student can still submit a FAFSA. However, they're going to enter zeros anywhere a parent's social security number is asked for. You'll want to begin the FAFSA process by collecting all of the documents that you need to complete the form. By doing this, it really should take no longer than about 30 minutes to submit your FAFSA. Those documents include the student and parents' social security cards, because you must report your name and number exactly as it's printed on your most recent card. The student and parents' 2020 federal income tax returns, if you filed one. And if you don't have a copy of this return, now is the time to request a duplicate copy. And I'm going to tell you why it's important to have this tax return in front of you when you're completing your FAFSA in just a minute. You'll need your W-2s because there's information on these forms that might not be found on the federal income tax return. And then gather bank statements and your records of investments because you must report the balances of these accounts as of the date you submit your FAFSA. You're going to want to begin the process by visiting fsaid.ed.gov to create your federal student aid ID. And this is going to allow the student and one of his parents to identify themselves electronically when accessing the FAFSA. It's going to consist of a username and password that you, the student, and one of your parents is going to create using their personal information. Now, don't share information. Student, don't use mom or dad's mobile phone or email address to create your FSA ID and vice versa. Also for the students, be sure to use your personal email account and not your school email address, because once school's out, you'll have no way to contact, federal student aid will have no way to get in touch with you. Your FSA ID username and password is your official electronic signature and it's legally binding. So make sure that you're recording it because you're going to need it every academic year, but keep it in a really secure place. Now, if you don't have access to a computer when you're ready to get started, you can always download the FAFSA mobile app. It's called My Student Aid, and it's easy to use to submit your FAFSA, either on your mobile phone or any other mobile device with internet access. Or if you prefer, you can go to FAFSA.gov and complete your FAFSA on the web-based version. Now, if you want to begin the process on the mobile app and switch over to the web-based version, that'll be fine because all the information is going to be integrated into one form when it's time to sign and submit. Once you're in the FAFSA, you will be asked to identify your role. So if you're the parent, enter as the parent. If you're the student, enter as the student. Parents, if you have permission to complete the form for the student, go ahead and enter as the student so you can see all of the questions being asked. You'll want to begin the FAFSA by logging in with the student's FSA ID because the FAFSA is the student's application for federal student aid. The parent ID is going to be used later in the process if you choose to transfer your information from the IRS and drop it into the FAFSA, and then again to sign your child's FAFSA. The high school class of 2020 should complete the 22. Did I say 2020? The high school class of 2022 should complete the 2022-2023 FAFSA because that's the academic year in which the student is applying for financial aid. You're going to see two options, but if you select the 21-22 FAFSA, the colleges are going to think that you are going to be going to college this academic year. And remember, Louisiana Public School seniors must complete the 22-23 FAFSA to meet their graduation requirement. Next, you'll be asked to create a save key, which is a short series of letters and or numbers which serve as an additional layer of security. Also, if you don't complete your FAFSA in one sitting, when you re-enter, you will be asked to provide that save key. So be sure you're recording this where you keep your username and password. When you get into the main portion of the FAFSA, you'll see that there are 7 sections that need to be completed before submitting. And the information that you use to create the FSA ID must match exactly what you're entering in the FAFSA itself. So be sure that you are making note of how you created your ID, and we're using the same information here. These sections are going to include, first of all, student demographics. The student is going to be asked in that first section, to provide his social security number, his name as printed on his social security card, date of birth, personal email address, home address, residency status, and gender. You'll next move to the school selection section where the student will name his high school and any colleges that he would like his FAFSA data to be sent to. Then he'll be asked to state his housing plans on each of those campuses. Next, in the dependency status section, the student will be asked to consider a list of 10 questions that will determine whether he is dependent or independent for FAFSA purposes. He'll be asked to provide the number of dependents living in his household and his parents' education completion level to determine whether he is a first-generation college student. In the parent demographic section, parents will report their social security numbers, their names, marital status, and provide the email address of the person who created the FSA ID and plans to sign the student's FAFSA. Next, you'll move to the parent financials, where parents will report their working wages from 2020, any federal benefits they receive, and the balance of savings and investment accounts. Next, you'll move to the student financials, where students will be asked to report the exact same information. Sometimes this can be confusing because you've just entered parent financials and tax filing status, and then you switch over to student. So, and the questions are exactly the same. So always make sure that you're looking at the heading on the page to make sure whose information they're asking for. Now, as you move through the FAFSA itself, if you have a question about any questions, there's a question mark over to the side. Make sure you're clicking on that question mark for a better description of what they want you to enter in that field. So once you get through the student financial section, it's almost time to sign and submit.
I tried this,
And you'll be
then she sent me, then she undid it.
You'll be asked to review the FAFSA summary page. Oops, I'm not sure if I got muted or not.
I'm sorry. That was my bad. I apologize.
No problem. But the FAFSA summary page shows every question you were asked and your answer to it. If you need to make a correction, just hover over the question itself. It'll take you right back to the form and you can make that correction. I'm also going to encourage you to print that FAFSA summary page if you can at all, just for your records. Next, you're going to move on into the sign and submit section. Now, the student and one of his parents, that parent that created the FSA ID, should sign the FAFSA. Because if you submit before providing those electronic signatures, the FAFSA is going to be marked incomplete. And the processing of your financial aid is going to be on hold until you go back in, sign, and resubmit the FAFSA. Of course, if you have listed two parents on your FAFSA, remember that the parent who created the ID is the one who needs to sign. So make a note of which parent that is. Is that parent one or parent two? And then you'll be ready to provide his or her signature. Only the colleges that you list on the FAFSA in that school selection section are going to consider you for student financial aid. So you want to make sure that you're adding all of the colleges that you're considering. Even if you haven't finished your admissions application yet, you can add them to the FAFSA. And the financial aid office will hold on to your FAFSA transmission until you've been accepted to their college. You can add up to 10 at a time. So if you're planning to apply to more than 10 colleges, list the first 10, sign and submit your FAFSA. Once it's fully processed, go back into the FAFSA, remove those 10, and add an additional 10. Now, to determine whether the student is dependent or independent for FAFSA purposes, remember how we talked about that dependency status question? These are the questions the students will be asked. Will you be 24 or older by January 1st of the school year for which you're applying for financial aid? Are you married or separated but not divorced? Will you be working on a graduate degree during the academic year in which you're applying for aid? Do you have children or other dependents other than children or a spouse who receive more than half of their support from you? Let's see. Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces? Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? At any time since you turned 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care or were you a ward or a dependent of the court? Are you an emancipated minor or are you in legal guardianship as determined by a court? And it's important to note that legal custody is not always considered legal guardianship. So make sure you have your documents with you when you're completing the FAFSA. And then the last question, are you an unaccompanied youth who's homeless or are you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Now, if you do answer yes to this question, make sure that you have a copy of the documentation from the school district to support this claim. If a student can answer yes to just one of these dependency status questions, then they're considered an independent student for FAFSA purposes, and they will not be asked to provide parental information. But let's say you live with grandparents or other relatives who are not your legal guardians and they have not adopted you. You still must provide information about your biological parents if those are still your legal parents. Because remember, you don't want to put any other person's information in your FAFSA that is not your legal parent. Now, let's say you live with a grandparent or another relative or friend, and that person has not legally, they're not your legal guardians. Or let's say that they are your legal guardians. You still do not want to add their information because you're an independent student by being in legal guardianship. On the other hand, let's say that one of those people you live with has legally adopted you. Then you will provide their information because they are now your legal parent. And this can be confusing. So if you do want to talk to me at any time as you're going through the process, I'm going to leave my contact information with you. Also, for FAFSA purposes, you're not considered an independent student simply because you may file your own taxes or you live alone and choose to support yourself. You still will be asked to provide information about your legal parents. And then the most commonly asked question that we receive is, which parent or parents should I list on the FAFSA? The parent or parents that you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months should be listed on that FAFSA. So if you live with both of your biological parents, you want to list both of them. But if the parent you lived with the longest, the past 12 months, is either separated, divorced, or was never married, then you should list just that legal parent on your FAFSA. Unless that parent is now remarried, then you must provide information about your step parent. Because federal student aid wants to know the financial standing of the household that the student has lived in the longest in the 12 months prior to the date that the FAFSA was submitted. Now, if you're identified as a dependent student, say you could not answer yes to one of the dependency status questions, but your parents will not provide their information on your FAFSA. You can submit it by stating I'm unable to provide parental information. But remember, you're only going to be offered that unsubsidized direct student loan. You will not be considered for any of the free money, no grants or need-based loans. So please encourage your parents to participate in the process. But if they are still hesitant to do that, go ahead and submit that FAFSA, but contact your financial aid counselor because she can work with you and your parents to acquire that information. And if not, she might or he might be able to find some additional money to help you pay for your academic year. Now, to expedite the processing of your federal student aid, student and parents are encouraged to use the Internal Revenue Service's data retrieval tool to provide their 2020 income information. Using this tool, which is your choice, can greatly diminish your chances of being selected for verification by your college financial aid office. So in other words, the financial aid office has to verify all the information that you provide on your FAFSA. If you use this tool, they know that that income information is coming directly from the IRS and they do not have to bother with verifying it. If you manually enter your tax information, you almost always will be asked by each of your colleges to go to the IRS website, request a tax transcript, and send it directly to them for verification purposes. If you do choose to use the IRS data retrieval tool, you'll see down at the bottom, proceed to the IRS. And then you'll be taken directly into the portal itself. This is where you want to grab your 2020 federal income tax return because you must enter your name, address, zip code, city, exactly as it's printed on that return, even if your preparer misspelled the information or abbreviated it, because the IRS wants to make sure that the person who's in their site is the person who filed that return. And say you've moved since you filed this return, you still want to use the address printed on it. As I mentioned, once you submit your FAFSA, you'll automatically receive a FAFSA confirmation page. This page is so important. So I'm really going to encourage you to print it or take a screenshot of it because this is all the information in one place and you may not see this again in another place. So make sure that you are taking a good look to see the date and time that you submitted the FAFSA. There's a data release number here if you want the college itself to make corrections on your financial aid forms for you, so you don't have to log back in, make those changes and wait again for it to be processed. It gives you steps that you need to take to continue through the financial aid process. You'll see the colleges that you've listed on your FAFSA in case you want to add one a little bit later, and you can view your estimated expected family contribution. Once your FAFSA is fully processed, which usually takes about 3 to 5 days, it's then shared with your colleges, and they begin to identify any aid that you might be eligible to receive. Say you want to add a school or change your contact info or make any other changes that your college might have asked you to make, you'll simply log back into the FAFSA and make those changes. But remember to sign and submit each time. And if your family's financial situation has changed since 2020, contact your college financial aid office because the counselors there have the ability to adjust that aid by using their own professional judgment. So if you have had a loss of income, somebody's been laid off, you've had some unexpected medical expenses, talk to your financial aid counselor. Just like Mrs. Marks and your high school counselors, this is what they do for a living and they are great to work with. So let them help you out. Because they're trying to determine the student's net price. That's what the student is going to be responsible for paying toward his education. They will list the cost of attendance at their college and subtract any grants and scholarships that they are that you're eligible for at their school. Now, each college is going to provide you with your financial aid offer. So you've provided them with your information via the FAFSA. It now goes straight to the colleges, and they will send a letter. Sometimes, most often it's through email or through the school account. Sometimes it's a letter through the U.S. Postal Service, so be looking for all three. Each college will tell you what their cost of attendance is, and then they'll line item any grant, scholarship, student loan, just anything that they can find to help you pay for your college experience. Once you do select your college, you want to accept your financial aid in this order. First would be grants and scholarships, because this is gift aid that does not have to be repaid. Next, federal work study, because you've earned this money and you don't have to pay it back. And then student loans, because this is borrowed money that must be repaid with interest. And now is the time to begin or continue your search for scholarships. You'll find them offered by colleges, your parents' employers, private and nonprofit organizations, just to name a few. Some are going to be merit-based, awarded on your academic achievement, and others will be based on financial need. But applying for and winning these scholarships is going to reduce the cost of your education, which bottom line means minimizing your student loan debt. This year, LELA will award a $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship for Louisiana high school seniors who've completed, and a $1,000 Choose Louisiana scholarship for those of you who plan to stay in the state of Louisiana and attend a college here. You can find the details of these at lela.org, or you can email me directly and I'll be happy to send you that scholarship application. Now, for those of you who need additional help paying for college after accepting all scholarships, grants, federal and state aid, LELA does administer a nonprofit education loan program called LELA Choice, and it's just for Louisiana residents. If you want to find out the details, visit our website at lelachoice.org. And remember, to keep receiving financial aid, you must complete the FAFSA every year you're in college. Now, if you have not already received a copy of LELA's FAFSA completion guide for the class of 2022, please feel free to email me directly. I want you to make sure that you jot down our FAFSA helpline, whether you have a general financial aid question or you're working on your FAFSA and you need some assistance. We're always there to help you. And if you want to communicate with me directly via email, here it is. So I want to take the next few minutes, or the time we have remaining, to answer any questions that you might have. So drop them in that Zoom chat box, and Mrs. Marks is going to read them aloud and we'll discuss them.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carmichael. I have, I think just one. There was a previous question about step-parent financial information, but then you did answer the question during the presentation. I did confirm that that was a sufficient answer for her. The next question is, when I was filling out the FAFSA form, I got to a step and it kept getting an error. And so probably, I guess the advice would be to sign up for a one-on-one session to maybe see the tax step, she's saying. Perhaps a one-on-one session to maybe work through whatever that issue is.
That is often the best way to go through the process instead of getting frustrated with it. So make sure that you are jotting down my information and we can schedule an appointment to work on your FAFSA.
I'm going to go ahead and put the Google link to that address, to that schedule an individual appointment. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. If anybody would like to use that Google form to fill out and schedule an appointment with Ms. Carmichael or someone at Leela to assist with any technical issues, especially, as well as any questions you have getting things done.
Right, and
to
I'm
use
going to
that.
drop the link to the FAFSA completion. No, let's see, yeah, to the FAFSA completion scholarship here as well.
Great. And that is something that I have already shared, the scholarship link with our seniors in the Google Classroom. So I sent all that information when I sent the original resources. So hopefully the students saw that. They certainly can still access it now. Anybody have any other questions? If you'd prefer to just unmute yourself and ask the question out loud, you can certainly do that.
I do have one. Excuse me. I'm looking for resources for out-of-state Christian colleges, and just wondering if you guys had any I don't know, direction that you could point. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, Ms. Carmichael, I'm not sure if you had any insight on that. I know the FAFSA is a federal document, and so there are a lot of colleges around the nation, if not most around the nation, that utilize the FAFSA in awarding financial aid. There are some private colleges that have their own processes internally for that. You may find yourself filling out a form for a particular college that is similar to what you feel like you're doing for the FAFSA. I know I had to do that for a private college for my daughter. As far as scholarships that are specific, I mean, obviously the things that would be specific to Christian colleges are going to be mostly affiliated with those schools. Your best resource would be to go on to those schools' websites and look at what, if they have either perhaps non-competitive scholarships, some schools do that, where if you meet a minimum guideline of ACT score and GPA, they may award an amount of money based on meeting that criteria. And then of course, they'll have competition scholarships where you would have to do, your student would have to do an application, perhaps probably a writing sample, and then they would be in competition with other students. So that might be your best bet for that specific of an area. I have not received anything at this point coming to me via email from organizations, but that is also another way for you to maybe look, if you look at some Christian organization websites, they may actually advertise any scholarship opportunities they are going to offer as well. So if you know of Christian organizations or perhaps organizations, whether they be state or national, that may offer that. They might not be very lucrative scholarships, but every little bit helps. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, I think we have a few questions got added to I have one son that is a senior in college now. He did the FAFSA under my name. Now they dropped all of his benefits because of the combined income of my wife and I. Oh, wow. Okay, can I go under his mother in the future?
Can he go under his mother in the future?
Can he go under his mother, under his mother in the future? Okay. Ms. Carmichael?
If a student lives with both of his legal parents, he must provide information about both parents. Federal student aid is a majority need-based. So if the family does have a combined income and other criteria that exceed what those need-based options are, unfortunately, they won't be eligible for those.
That's not the case, though. In other words, we were married, we're separated, we're divorced. I got remarried. So the combined income of my wife and myself is higher than the income of the mother of the child.
All right, well, that does make a difference. But remember that the student has to report the parent or parents that he lived with the longest in the past 12 months. Or if he lived with them an equal amount of time, he should report the parent or parents that provided him with the most financial assistance. So it is your son's FAFSA, and he of course can decide to report whichever parent or parents or step parents to claim on his FAFSA. But I will let you know that the financial aid office will verify the situation, and he will be asked to,
Provide
tell them
information.
which parent he lived with the
Yeah,
longest.
we're not looking at cheating. We're just looking at basically being what is exact.
Yes. And that is what that's how the FAFSA reads. Provide information about the parent or parents that you lived with the longest in the past 12 months.
Okay, one question is kind of similar to this topic. The question is, what if a student lived with mother during high school, but will move with father during college? Does he still report mother's income? I believe the answer is yes, because that would be the parent that the student had lived with the previous 12 months. Now, the following year, it may be a different parent's. It may be the father's income at that point, right? If
That's
because
right.
he would have lived with his father for the previous 12 months.
Because the question reads, as of the date you submit your FAFSA, which parent or parents have you lived with the longest in the past 12 months?
In the past 12 months. Okay. Hopefully that answered that question. It does look like it may change, and similar to you, Tony, the same situation
Correct.
changed, evolved through the years during college, because you do have to do the FAFSA every year to retain the award that you're given.
It answers both questions with the 20-year-old and the one coming, Alex.
Okay. All right, I have a new question. When the child goes away for college, whose information is to be reported for years 2, 3, and 4? I'm assuming that would default to the last parent lived with.
Parent who you either lived with the longest. So even if you're taking a spring break and you're staying with mom, or you stay with mom through the summer, just the parent that you lived with the longest in the past 12 months. And if you lived down to the minute with the same amount of minutes with each parent, then it defers to report the parent who provided you with the most support in the past 12 months.
Okay, I have a different, more custodial question. My granddaughter has lived with me for 9 years and is now 18. Would she now go with her grandparents' income, salaries?
Unless you have legally adopted the granddaughter, you will never provide your information on the FAFSA, grandmother. If she is still legally the child of her biological parents, she still needs to provide those parents' information, even if she's lived with you. Now, if you have legal guardianship of her for the past 9 years, then she won't provide any adult information. She'll be considered independent.
Okay,
Does that answer that?
I think so. I was just gonna check, follow up with that person that asked the question. Let me ask her. That answered the question. And then I think we have another question too. Okay, if a parent did not sign the submitted form when he submits the form with both student and parent signature, I'm not sure if that's a question. Does this start the process all over again? Oh, or can we resubmit through the counselor? If you're talking about me, no, you cannot submit anything for the FAFSA through me. It all has to be done through the FAFSA website. He has already completed and received confirmation. So I'm guessing the question is, if because don't you have to provide both FAFSA IDs, both the parent and student's FAFSA ID
Yes.
in order to complete the form? Okay,
On
So-
occasion, a student will sign the FAFSA and not have mom or dad sign electronically. So that FAFSA can be submitted like your child has submitted here, and he will receive a confirmation. But on FAFSA's end, it's incomplete. So what you'll do is have him log back into the FAFSA, or parent with the FSA ID, log into your child's FAFSA, go directly to that step number 7, sign and submit, and sign the FAFSA. Now, they might ask the student to sign again, so it might be a good idea for both of you to be together, have the student sign, make sure the parent signs with his ID, and then submit it. And then it will be complete.
okay. She said, okay, thanks.
Great. You will receive a new confirmation page, so just disregard the first one.
All right, anybody have any other questions?
What's for lunch?
I wish I could be doing this in person so I could provide y'all with lunch. So I do want to just remind everybody, if you have everything finished by December 1st, your student gets a Gene Week in December, and with a uniform shirt. And I'll be passing out there'll be wristbands that they'll have to have in order to be able to do that. And so, but beyond that, if nobody has any other questions, I think we might be okay to go. And also, of course, we did record this, and I'm going to be sharing this recording and the previous week's recording, just in case there might have been questions asked last week when we did the 6 p.m. session. I'll share both of them for that, for you guys to reference. So that's it. I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon. Thank you again, Ms.
Bye.
Carmichael.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.